Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm Earl Beecher, your host. Our guest is Captain Richard Bonneau of the Los Angeles Police Department. And Captain Bonneau, welcome to the show.
Earl, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm happy you could make it. I want to ask a couple of questions. A captain. Now, I was once in the Army, and we had generals and colonels and lieutenant colonels and majors and captains. What is a captain's rank in the police department? Is it the same kind of an idea?
Earl, the rank structure is similar, although there are some differences. I guess you could compare the general to the chief of police and his immediate assistants. And then below the chief of police, in our case, we have deputy chiefs, commanders. Below that rank is captains, and captains usually, such as in my case, are in charge of a geographic division.
So it's a geographic?
In some cases. In my case, it is a geographic division. In some cases, it's a division that is involved in a certain specialty. Like we have a special division called Robbery Homicide Division that investigates major robberies and homicides throughout the city, and that's commanded by a captain.
Now, his is a function where yours is a geographic area?
That's correct.
Now, what comes after captain? Inspector?
And below the rank of captain is lieutenants, sergeants, and then the detectives and police officers.
A detective is below a sergeant?
Detectives are about the same rank as a sergeant. Our department is a little bit unique in that we have a bifurcated rank structure where that from the rank of police officer you can go either up to detective or up to sergeant, and then you advance through those two ranks, and at the top the structure closes again at the rank of lieutenant.
Does the detective deal more with the function, like a specialty of robbery or murder, and the other geographic? Is that the way it works?
We have both. We have detectives.
It's all over the place, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's rather. We have both detectives that work in specialized assignments, so they handle, such as the detectives that work in Robbery Homicide Division.
Yes.
And they would handle homicides and robberies that occur all over the city. So they're functionally oriented.
So they have to be able to coordinate with the captains on any geographic?
Yes. Yes, although they report directly to their own captain at Robbery Homicide Division. And then we have detectives that are assigned to the geographic divisions, and they handle their specialty within that geographic division.
Now, which geographic division is your responsibility?
I'm presently in command of Central Division, which is the downtown Los Angeles area. We have
the downtown Los Angeles. How big is the downtown Los Angeles area?
Well, geographically, it's actually very small. It's only about 4.5 square miles, but it includes the area basically from Elysian Park on the north down to Washington Boulevard, and from about the Harbor Freeway on the west to the Los Angeles River on the east. So it's kind of a pie-shaped section of the city. Even though it's very small, we have one of the largest contingents of police officers in the city because we have such a large daytime population, and also because
all the business area.
All the business area.
Okay.
And the commuter traffic that comes in during the day.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have a large number of special events that we're responsible for that require a larger number of officers, such as anytime somebody wants to demonstrate against the government, it will be in our division.
Oh, naturally. Is the City Hall in your division?
City Hall, the federal building are all in our division, so that brings with it a lot of extra police necessity. And then we have the convention center. We have all the major hotels. So I think this past year we figured that there were over 70 events that required us to have special deployment to handle those special events.
So how many people does it take, or you're at liberty to reveal how many there are?
Oh, sure. We have right now, including the sworn police officers and our civilian administrative help, we have about 400 to 420 people.
That's not many for that population. You're dealing with a population of what, 1 million?
Well, depending on which counter you listen to, the daytime population goes anywhere from about 500,000 to 1 million. I don't think it's as high as 1 million, but I also don't think it's as low as 500,000. There's quite a population there in the daytime.
Are you ready for this loaded question?
Maybe.
Do you have responsibility for the traffic in that area?
No. Well, again, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
The geographic divisions are have the primary responsibility for traffic enforcement. However, when it comes to traffic accidents, that responsibility shifts to another division called Central Traffic Division. So although we're primarily responsible, we have a lot of help because we have another division that helps us out with traffic control and
So
traffic
you're not in
accidents.
charge of the traffic cops that we see who...
No.
Okay.
No, they work for another division.
I see. Well, it sounds to me like it's fascinating. You have some ethnic centers within your division. I
Oh,
think
yes, we do.
Chinatown or Japantown. What's it called? I'm not aware of the name.
Little Tokyo.
Little Tokyo. Okay.
We do have Little Tokyo, we have Chinatown, we have a very sizable contingent of Korean businesses in our area.
Okay, you have a lot of Asians.
Yes, we do. We have a lot of Korean people, a lot of, in Chinatown. It's very interesting that Chinatown has changed dramatically in the time that I've been on the police department. I had the luxury of working there when I was a brand new police officer.
Okay.
And the Chinese people in Chinatown at that time were predominantly from Hong Kong or mainland China. Today, Chinatown is made up of people from all over the Asian continent. I mean, we have people from Southeast Asia.
Which had formerly been Red China. You have a lot of people now.
Well, Taiwan primarily.
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Okay.
And Hong Kong, Cambodia, Vietnam, and so
I
on.
know I may be getting out of line, but I've always thought that the crime rate might be lower where the Asian population is located.
You know, I can't, as it happens, both in Little Tokyo and in Chinatown, we have a very low crime rate.
Yes.
Whether that is a result of the ethnicity of the people that live there, I don't know.
Or the conscientiousness of the people that live there, maybe.
Yes, yes, very industrious people that live in those two communities, and that could have a lot to do with it also.
Okay. Now, you have the main downtown area. I used to work in downtown, and I worked at 4th and Main, and 5th and Main was Skid Row, and 4th and Main was a good part of it. And do you still have the problems of Skid Row and the homeless there to a high degree?
Yes.
This was 30 years ago when I was there, see, more than that.
The homeless population is our primary problem in the division. It brings with it a lot of interesting problems, not the least of which is people living on the streets under very unsanitary conditions. But in addition to that, it tends to bring with it the various kinds of crimes that we tend to respond to: narcotics abuse, alcohol abuse, assaults, robberies, burglaries, burglaries of vehicles. And they do seem to be clustered right around that area where the homeless population is located.
Now, when I was there, Broadway was like department stores and theaters and had a lot of general people there, but it was still not the most wholesome street downtown. If you went east, you came to Spring Street, which was the financial headquarters, which has pretty much moved over to Bunker Hill, hasn't it?
Yes, it moved over to the west side. It has.
Now, is the Bunker Hill or the west side area still within your jurisdiction?
Yes, we go all the way to the Harbor Freeway.
All the way to the harbor. Okay, so that you have all of these activities going on. And Main Street was bad when I was there, and I worked on Main. And I could go to lunch, and I would be approached anywhere from 5 to 15 times a city block, you know, if you got a quarter for a cup of coffee. And since we were weaving a little anyway, I wasn't sure it was coffee they wanted, if you understand what I'm saying.
Well, you bring up a lot of interesting questions there. Number one, I think you date yourself because you tell about some of the problems on Main Street that aren't nearly that bad today.
They're not that bad today.
No.
I'm glad to hear that.
Main Street, the same problems exist, although they've shifted a little bit east, I think. I remember the days that you're talking about and when Main Street was that way. And I think Main Street and Broadway both have changed, probably for the better.
Some of the big department stores moved out. Bullock's used to be at 7th and Broadway, and they're gone, and you had some major stores. Do you have any major stores down there now?
We don't have any major department stores. The old May Company building is now occupied by different tenants. The Broadway building has recently been purchased, I believe, by the state, and is going to be made into a state office building.
Okay.
However, at the same time that I say that we don't have the major department stores, we have something that most people don't know, which is the largest garment manufacturing and garment sales district in the country.
On Broadway?
Well, actually it starts at about 7th Street, goes down to about Pico,
It's
And
always been kind of that way.
it's always been there, but never quite as large, and never quite as much of a retail and wholesale outlet to the public as it is now.
Okay, they tell me we need to pause for a public service announcement, so
Okay.
stay with us. We'll be right back with Captain Richard Bonneau of the Los Angeles Police Department. Our guest is Captain Richard Bonneau of the Central Division of the Los Angeles Police Department. And this division right downtown, I would think would be the focal point of all the major problems that come up.
It's the focal point of a lot of things. Not all of them are problems, but in terms of demonstrations against anything the government does, against the city or the police department, or any action that's pending before the city council, we tend to be the focus point.
What is the main or the most frequent cause of a demonstration? Is there some subject area that tends to be the sensitive area that people keep coming in and demonstrating?
A lot of political demonstrations over issues involving political decisions by the political leaders of the city and the county and the state
City
and the
council,
nation.
the governor, and the mayor, anything.
And since the federal building is there, many times even the federal government. Also, we tend to get demonstrations over labor disputes, where there's a union management issue.
Okay.
Those seem to be the main ones. One time, here not too long ago, we had a demonstration that people, I think it was 180,000 people, if I remember right, that marched from the Hollenbeck area into the City Hall area.
180,000?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
We get some major events.
Were they throwing anything like rocks or bottles?
No, this was very peaceful.
Very orderly.
Very orderly, very peaceful. There's no
thank goodness
problem at
for
all.
that.
It was just anytime there's that many people, it creates traffic problems, and it creates the concern that there may be something that's not so peaceful. But this turned out very peaceful.
Now, since you told me that I was dating myself by my reaction to certain streets and things, the downtown area has become more one-way streets than it used to be, a lot more, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
And it's a little tricky to find your way around sometimes.
Sometimes it can be. Some of the main north-south streets that were two-way streets in the past are now one-way. Not all of them, but some of them.
Do you ever have trouble with people going the wrong way?
Yes, we do, frequently.
Oh, dear. You have to haul them over. Look, fella, here's the sign. Go that way. Oh, dear. I wanted to ask you, Richard, what are some of the latest developments like in crime statistics? Is the crime level going down? I'd heard rumors to that effect.
Crime has been going down by significant numbers for at least the last 5 or 6 years. It's a nationwide phenomena. It's going on down all over the country.
Do you have any idea why that's happening?
Yes, I do. There are some reasons that are directly related to the police service, and then there are some other reasons that we probably don't have any control over, such as the general age level of the population. A lot of people believe, and I'm one of those, that certain types of crimes especially tends to congregate within certain age groups. And as people move, the general population moves through that age group, and the demographics change, then the crime issues change as well.
Do they have a lot to do with drugs?
Most of the crimes that we investigate, many of the crimes that we deal with have something to do with drugs, yes.
Now, is the drug concentration in the Central Division greater than drug concentrations further out, as far as crimes statistics or frequency?
You know, I can't compare. I really don't have the statistics available to compare our division to other divisions, but I do know that we have a significant drug problem in the Skid Row area, and sidewalk dealers and things like that. And that mainly is because of the population that is there. Not necessarily that population is buying drugs more than others, but a lot of the dealers like to use that population as a facade to cover up their criminal activity. And so we get people coming there that don't live in the Skid Row area that are coming there to deal their drugs. And others that come there to buy their drugs as well.
Yes. So the crime level is going down. You said partly due to police activity and partly due to generic changes in ages. What are some of the police activities that you credit for helping to reduce it?
I can talk specifically about the city of Los Angeles, and of course, as we all know, recently there's been a large increase in the size of the department. We've gone from a department of about 7,000 to a department of about 9,500 in the last 4 to 5 years.
Okay, well that's almost a 30% or so increase.
Quite an increase, and that's impacted our ability to provide faster and better service on the street. It's been a very positive thing.
Are you the guys that respond to 911 most of the time?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, then you're everybody's best friend when it gets right down to it.
We hope so. We like to think that. Yes,
yes.
we are.
Right. You're the people we rely on. When something comes up that's beyond our control, we yell for the police. And the community is starting to recognize this fact.
Well, one of the other things, Earl, that is, I think, very instrumental in this crime reduction, especially in the city of Los Angeles, is this a philosophical change in the way that we approach our jobs. And we call that, in the past, we called it community policing. That term is really ill-defined because from one city to the next, from one jurisdiction to the next, community policing will mean a different thing. But in Los Angeles, we've defined it by 4 very specific characteristics. One is working in closer partnerships with community organizations and residents.
What organizations in particular?
Well, all. In fact, we've begun to call this, instead of community policing, community-based government, because we really think it's a move back to the days when the people are in charge of what goes on. And so our effort is to try to get everybody included.
Well, now, I've heard that there's a movement to get the policemen out of the patrol car and onto the street and on foot and more visible among the neighborhood and get to know the people in the neighborhood and so forth. That may not be true in central downtown Los Angeles as much as some of the outlying areas.
Well, actually, it's truer in Central Division than many of the other areas.
It is.
Because we do have a small area that can be patrolled on foot. One of the things that we're finding that is very effective is patrol on bicycle. I'll give you 2 extreme examples, and then I'll tell you why bicycles are so good. On one extreme, you have officers in radio cars that are quite isolated from the community. But however, they're very mobile and get around very quickly.
Yes.
But they're isolated from face-to-face contact with members of the community that they come in contact with, unless they get a radio call.
They don't get to really know the people by first name or something, which I think is the neighborhood cop. That's when I was a youngster, the neighborhood cop was somebody we really looked up to.
That's correct. And that's right. And that officers in radio cars have tended to interfere a little bit with that idea, that philosophy.
Okay.
On the other extreme, you have officers on foot, and they have a lot of face-to-face contact. They become the neighborhood cop. They become everybody's best friend, which is what we want.
Yes.
But they're not mobile, and they can't get around very much. So if something happens 2 blocks away, by the time they get there, it's all over, and they're very little service.
Yeah.
The ideal interim step seems to be, at least in Central Division for us, it has been officers on bicycles. Because on the bicycle, they still have a great deal of face-to-face contact and direct communication with people. And yet we find, because of the high traffic in the downtown area, they can arrive on the scene of emergency calls quicker than cars.
Yeah, well, with the cars, I guess you could get tied up in a traffic jam where a bicycle can get through. He could ride on the sidewalk if he needs to, or the street, whatever.
That's right.
I want to ask you, this blue ribbon on your lapel has something to do with this, does it not?
Yes, it does.
I wonder, can we get a close-up of this blue ribbon? Dan, if you can get a shot of that for us. Pull back. Well, what is it?
Well, it's a little blue ribbon that we came up with, police officers and the police department came up with in the days following the civil unrest and some of the other things that occurred in the city that...
Civil unrest is a polite way of saying the riots, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I know you're very careful in your language, and I haven't learned how to do that yet, so...
But the purpose was to signify that this is in support of the police department. This is in support of the officers that many people were looking at with negative thoughts back in those days.
Do you issue those through organizations? How can a guy like me get one, or is it strictly for policemen?
No, we had thousands of these around at one time. There are not quite so many more of them around anymore, but I can certainly get you one. And,
I'd love to have one. I
and we
think
could
that's
get them,
fun.
buy them at the police academy at one time and other places.
Uh-huh. And so this is significant. It means that the person is cooperating, or at least is acquainted with policemen. And now, you were talking about the community getting involved in certain organizations. Are these people like the Red Cross, the Chambers of Commerce, are the churches?
Let me give you an example, and I think it will show you what I mean. As you pointed out earlier, Central Division is responsible for Little Tokyo.
Yes.
A second facet of community policing is this idea of problem solving. How do we identify a problem that is causing a criminal activity and then solve that problem? 4 or 5 years ago, as you know, Little Tokyo subsists primarily on tourist activity and tourist trade.
Sure.
So whenever there's anything negative going on there, it tends to hinder people and set the perception that it's not a safe place to be, and they tend to stay away. About 4 or 5 years ago, people that came to Little Tokyo were routinely having their cars broken into, and that was causing the tourist trade not to come to Little Tokyo. So the senior lead officer at Central Division, working in conjunction with some of the community members, came up with an organization that is today called the Little Tokyo Public Safety Association.
And this is local residents keeping an eye on...
Local businessmen and residents that are volunteers, and they set their own community patrol at night, walk around the street. We provided some basic training. Ultimately, we even provided some bicycles for them to use. And they work very closely in conjunction with the officers, so they have a cellular telephone, they have a direct line to the watch commander's office, and they don't really take any law enforcement action, but they discourage negative activity on the street.
They're the eyes.
The eyes of the police department, and that's exactly what they are.
Very good.
It's been so successful that virtually there are no burglaries from vehicles in Little Tokyo today. They're
Oh, that's
completely
good
eliminated.
news. I mean, I can go back up to the restaurants
Yes.
there and enjoy it.
I encourage you to do that. It's a great
Okay.
place.
They tell me it's time for another public service announcement, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Captain Richard Bonneau is our guest from the Central Division in Los Angeles. And while we were on the break for the public service announcement, Captain Bonneau mentioned a phrase that I want him to define for us. It was the quality of life crimes. What do you mean, quality of life crimes?
Well, Earl, this leads right into another major facet of community policing, and that is allowing the community and the people that live and work and do business in the city to help us set the priorities as a police department for what we're going to focus on. And what we find when we do that is many times as a police agency, we like to count the major crimes, the homicides, the robberies, the rapes, and those kinds of things, which are all very important.
The 7 majors.
The 7 major crimes.
Yes.
But when we judge our success exclusively by those 7 things, quite often what we find is we're overlooking something that's very important to the community, and those are the things that we call quality of life issues, such as the panhandlers, such as the prostitutes, such as the graffiti, such as people illegally dumping and leaving rubbish in streets. And what we find is that if we can take care of those things, not only do we increase the satisfaction among the people that live there, but we cure this perception that many people have that the city is an unsafe place to be, and they draw that perception by virtue of the fact that they see the rubbish, they see the graffiti, they see the other things, and in their minds they equate that with an unsafe environment. In fact...
Well, it usually is equated.
Well, yes, sometimes, but what we find is not always.
Really?
For example, I'll use the example that was used when a theory called broken windows was put forward several years ago. James Q. Wilson and George Kelling wrote an article called Broken Windows. James Wilson is a psychologist at UCLA, and Kelling, I think, is back east at one of the major universities. And their theory was that if you have a building, for example, in a neighborhood, and that building has a broken window, and nobody repairs it, but rather just lets it sit there, that people begin to believe that it's okay to have broken windows. And so pretty soon you'll have more broken windows because it's obvious to people on the street that nobody cares. This is okay, it's acceptable conduct. Then pretty soon, as that continues to proliferate, you have other minor infractions beginning to occur. Graffiti, panhandlers, rubbish being dumped. And then the whole environment
Nice
begins...
downward spiral.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So the theory is that if we can have an impact on these quality of life issues by working with community organizations and people, that we can in fact have a big impact also on the crime rate. And I think we're showing that that's probably true in Los Angeles.
And so this is a pet theory of mine, and they tell me we're just about out of time, but I've always felt every criminal has a family or somebody who he lives with who knows he's up to no good. Therefore, are they in collusion with him? Is there a conspiracy?
Well, you know, conspiracy under the law is a very specific set of characteristics, and you probably could not draw a conspiracy, legal conspiracy, based on that
But
theory.
if the family and the neighborhood turned to this criminal and said, that's it, we've had enough, we're going to report you if you do it anymore, it would slow things
yes,
down
it would.
completely, wouldn't it?
Have a big impact.
Yes, that's important. Listen, they tell me time is up. I want to thank you for being our guest. Our guest has been Captain Richard Bonneau of the Los Angeles Police Department. Thank you again, Captain.
Thank you, Earl. Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.